This episode is presented in partnership with Open Cities Lab. Visit them at opencitieslab.org. Joanne Parker and Tshegang Chipeya are my guests today on Future Cities Africa. We'll be discussing the South African Cities Open Data Almanac, or more widely known as SCODA. But before we get into that, Joanne, Tshegang, welcome. Give us a brief introduction to your respective roles.
Thanks, Dan. So I am the product owner or project manager for the SCODA program at Open Cities Lab.
Thank you, Dan. I work within eThekwini Municipality and I am the program lead for the Durban EDGE Programme. The Durban EDGE Programme is the economic intelligence program for eThekwini Municipality, which provides economic intelligence on Durban's economy.
Joe, who and what is SCODA and what does it do?
SCODA, as you mentioned, it officially stands for South African Cities Open Data Almanac. It started out as just a portal for sharing data on South African cities, so one national portal sharing data on all South African cities. But it's since grown, it's iterated a lot over this last sort of 5 or 6 years, and it's grown into not just a portal, but a program where open source civic tech is offered to cities to improve their data pipelines, data sharing, and also data management practices. So we're now active in eThekwini, eKuruleni, and the city of Johannesburg with this program.
And how did the program come about, and where did the need for SCODA stem from?
The idea for a central repository of open, standardized, and transparent city data was spawned by Open Cities Lab, together with the South African Cities Network about 5 or so years ago. So SACN already curates and releases city data through PDFs. So it made a lot of sense to start to share this data in an even more accessible way through open and interactive data portal. SACN also convenes a working group of city data practitioners who this idea was tested with, and the demand from cities themselves for new ways to collect, share, and compare data was evident.
Tshegang, how did you hear about the program at the Durban EDGE?
So if it's okay, I'll give a little bit of a background to the Durban EDGE, which will lead into why or how we heard about it. The Durban EDGE program has been running for some time. It was established in 2011 as, like I said, a platform for economic intelligence on Durban's economy. So we'd been running successfully for some time, and the way that we used to disseminate our information was through PDFs. And we would also have discussions in the form of seminars and conferences and the like. So over time, as the program grew, we began to realize and we began to understand that the way that people consume information and intelligence and even data was changing. So we used to share data anyway in our PDFs, say, for example, on water consumption or electricity consumption as an indication of economic activity in the city. But we began to understand that people were more on social media. They were consuming data in more of a digital way. And we began to understand that we needed to have something in the form of a website. We had a strategy developed for us, which recommended strongly that we needed a website. So we tried the website and it just never got off the ground. We never actually did the website yet, but it got, it didn't really pick up off the ground in the planning stage. And around about that time, we'd had a partnership for some time, a loose, informal partnership for some time with Open Cities Lab, which was Open Data Durban at the time. And I think it came up in a conversation what it is that we were trying to do. And then in that same conversation, then the director, Richard at the time said, hey, we've got this going on with the South African Cities Network, and we're actually looking for a pilot, and you're the best case, that we can think of now because you already have something that you're trying to get off the ground. And so it just happened. We both had needs that had to be filled at the time. And so that's how we discovered SCODA.
So being at the right place at the right time did work out well for both parties in this end. Joe, what exactly does SCODA offer cities? What are the tools SCODA utilizes?
Primarily what we offer cities is technical assistance with their data needs. So this could take the form of civic tech and often does, but it could also be assisting with data strategies or capacity development. What we have learned over years of implementation is that it's best to develop our technical assistance around a well-defined use case that comes from the city. So by use case, we mean at a sort of on-the-job, real-world process that's already happening. So instead of just doing generalized data literacy training or sort of throwing a standard data portal at a city, we've learned it's much more effective to, for example, train using the city's actual data as part of a process that they're already doing quite frequently and looking to assist in optimizing that already existing process. With regard to the sort of specific tools we lean on, we use CCAN, which is an open source cloud-hosted data portal. It allows for both public and private data sets and strong user management, promoting sort of best practice metadata as well. We offer data stories and dashboards, which help external users better engage with data-driven insights. Sometimes we design and develop these, other times city partners do these through tools like Power BI, for example. We offer business intelligence and analytics. Again, this is often done through the creation of dashboards, but various options exist for that. We've also started to use Kobo, which is an open source form builder. It's very useful for data collection in the field and then collation and analysis of that data. Finally, we also offer bespoke tools, so tools that we develop in-house. For example, we recently developed the code book for the South African Cities Network, which is a directory of city data indicators that cities are already reporting on, so Circular 88 indicators, State of Cities Report indicators, and Sustainable Development Goal indicators. So this is like an online directory that has official definitions of all these indicators, and then it links through to the data that relates to those indicators as well. It took years to develop, so SACN first had to undergo, they first had to define the indicators, then they had to go out and collect all the city data for those indicators, and then we at OCL designed and developed the actual tool that got put onto the CCAN portal, and that's due to be launched in the coming sort of couple of months. But that's just an example of a bigger project and a more bespoke tool that also gets used.
Tshegang, how have these tools been utilized in the Durban EDGE case?
We have utilized, Joanne made reference to CCAN. And so, like I said, we were looking for different ways to share our data, and the SCODA model had been developed on CCAN, and we basically used the same model in our case. So we have an open data portal that's been developed for us by Open Cities Lab on the CCAN platform. So on CCAN, we have data stories. Like I said earlier, we used to share economic intelligence with different types of stakeholders, so businesses, associations, people within government, etc. But for insofar as we are connecting with people that are not interested in too much data, too many numbers, but they just need a story that gives you a picture or a story of what's happening in the economy, then we have data stories. So we use that tool. Then secondly, and that's on the landing page of the portal. Then secondly, for those people that are interested in the numbers and they want to do research themselves, and they're not necessarily interested in the story, but they need to put together a paper or whatever, then we use data sets. And those are the data stories as well as the data sets. The content is developed by the city, and Open Cities Lab then assisted us to package it. The data stories initially, Open Cities Lab packaged them for us, but now we're transitioning to the point where we are going to package them ourselves. Then we have dashboards. for people that are not interested in long stories or in the data itself. Maybe you just want to know what the unemployment rate is in Durban at any given point. You just need to click on one thing, find the unemployment rate, and click out. That's where we have dashboards. And then there were other sort of bespoke items here and there where there was important information to share. So for example, around COVID-19, we had put together a tool together with OCL of all the different types of funding available at the national, provincial, private sector and Durban level, Durban city level, and we put that onto the portal as well. So there are all these different sorts of tools that have been used within the SCODA platform that we've had access to through SCODA and Open Cities Lab and the SACN.
Tshegang, what is the importance of open data for the Durban EDGE, and how has the portal helped achieve this?
Open data is central to our mandate. So like I said, we exist to share economic intelligence so that people have the right information to make the right decisions on the economy. So to do that without open data is kind of like a misnomer. It's just not possible. We have to share data. We have to share on the performance of the economy. We have to share things like, where your opportunities are in the economy and that sort of thing. Open data has been very important, not just open data in and of itself, but the way that we open our data and the way that we share our data. So the portal has helped in the sense that I said earlier, we needed new ways of sharing our data. It's helped it make it more easy, more accessible and quicker for people to connect on information on the city. It's given us a wider reach. So when we look at the stats of our portal, it's reaching people, throughout the country, but also even outside of the country, which has been a pleasant surprise to us as well. But it's given us a wider reach just because, before we used to print booklets and share PDFs by email and upload them onto the city's website. But now it's a website. So it's given us a wider reach, and we're able to really achieve our mandate a lot more effectively than before we had the portal.
Jo, who are the parties involved in making this program a success?
The two sort of founding partners, as mentioned, were Open Cities Lab and the South African Cities Network. They fund 50% each of all the work on this program. Open Cities Lab is mainly responsible for project management, actual design, development, and technical data assistance to the partners on the program. And then the South African Cities Network is responsible for city liaison, content development and curation, especially on the main national SCODA portal, and also strategic oversight. And then obviously the city representatives are critical too. So the cities are paid members of South African Cities Network, and this is one of the benefits that they get for being a paid member of the South African Cities Network. And the representatives that, put their hand up to be part of this program, I really take my hat off to them because they're already very busy city practitioners, and this sort of innovation and process improvement, it really takes a lot of time. It's easier to do things the way that they've always been done. And I know Tshegang can also attest to the amount of time her and her team had to spend to move over onto the portal. I think now that they're there, that the benefits and in time saving can be accrued. But just to say that obviously the city and the city practitioners are critical partners as well in the process.
So Jo, what are the next steps and future vision for SCODA? What are your hopes and intentions for the program?
Okay, so obviously we'd like to do even more use cases within our existing city partners and then expand to even more South African cities and even cities across the continent. But I think that this will be made possible through more autonomy in the program. And by that, I mean, working hard behind the scenes to remove OCL as much as possible from the pipeline. So we're really working hard on developing platforms and using platforms that are easy for cities to actually do their own data management, their own dashboards and data stories, etc. So our goal really is to make it so that cities can use whatever civic tech is delivered and really work hard on our capacity building, training, and data governance aspects as well, so that OCL aren't bottlenecks in the process. So yeah, really a big goal is to increase city and partner autonomy in the use of the civic tech tools and processes that we deliver and that we assist with. And then also to grow intercity collaboration and also grow collaboration between the South African Cities Network and the cities around these tools and these use cases. I think, for example, the codebook is a useful tool that could really grow city collaboration, because, you know, there you have a directory now of indicators that can assist all cities use the data to benchmark against each other, to benchmark, you know, across the continent or internationally on items like the Sustainable Development Goals, for example. So yeah, we're really hoping to see better integration and collaboration between partners through the tools that we've developed. And then finally, I think we'd like to improve our impact measurement. So we really would like to understand the impacts that these tools are having on cities, on residents, on all stakeholders, to make sure that we're obviously always going in the right direction.
So it sounds like smooth sailing all the way, but I'm sure there's been challenges as well. What are some of the major challenges you faced along the way, and how were they overcome?
I think with anything that's new, it takes a lot of, I don't know, you need a very thick skin, and you need to just be prepared to handle all these challenges that you didn't foresee. But it was really particularly the case in this instance. So I think the concept of open data was just very new within our city. We firstly experienced the challenge of the fact that we also had a challenge setting up just a website, which we had wanted to initially, is just telling partially of the challenge that was, you know, about to come our way. And then just getting access to data from different parties, not only within the city, but externally as well. Access to data on Durban and being able to put it on the data portal. That in itself was such a mountain to climb. And we ended up, I think we started out with something like 2 or 3 data sets. Now we have something like 23. At first, we just started out with, I think, 2 departments or partners that were willing to walk the road with us. And God bless them, it was the electricity department and I think our planning department. So that was the other issue. And then I don't think that we foresaw the amount of capacity that was needed to get this up and running, because like I said, we already had a program that had been running for a couple of years. So I think that we had just initially expected to just switch or continue the program, but just have this other extra element on the side, whereas it's actually a whole different set of skills. There's a need for a lot of data know-how. I mean, you don't have to be a data scientist, but you still need to know, I don't know, the ins and outs of data. You still need to dedicate a lot of time. You need to, so all of that we just did not foresee, and we had to just learn it on the job. And then again, thankfully, this was a pilot together with Open Cities Lab. So we also had to find each other, ourselves and Open Cities Lab, them with their capacity and us with our capacity, and finding ourselves within the arrangements with the SACN. So yeah, it was quite hard, but I think everybody that was involved, when I say everybody, I'm speaking of the key partners that Joanne has mentioned, as well as us, and some of our some of our departments were very dedicated, which is why we got to where we got to today. But skills, capacity are a major thing that I would highlight to anybody wanting to walk the same course.
So how did you manage to grow your number of data sets? Is it just about increasing your partnerships?
Yes, we made the decision from the onset that we weren't going to be too formal in our approach to this. So initially, we thought that we would have an MOU with every single body or entity or department that agreed for us to upload the data set onto the portal. We quickly realized that if we do that, we'd have one new data set a year. So we decided to just use the channels we had, speak to different departments in different ways. And I guess initially what helps is that we're part of the same city. So we started out with some emails, we started out with phone calls. Hey, there's this idea, what would you think of uploading this? And then Open Cities Lab then offered some training with those people. And then we emailed our partners. Some people said no, some people said yes. And then when we had about 2 or 3 data sets, we made a lot of noise about it. I think we launched the portal with about 3 or 4 data sets, and then we made a lot of noise about it. And when we used data for anything, we made a lot of noise about it. So then some people started warming up and realizing, oh, okay, maybe this is a legitimate initiative, and maybe, you know, we do see the use for it. And then we worked with UKZN in some instances as well. And when they came on board, more people came on board, and so forth and so forth.
And what are some of the challenges when it comes to the recipients of this data in understanding it and making informed decisions?
We try as much as possible to put ourselves in their shoes. And on the other hand, you just don't know. I mean, it's a very good question, because you don't know until you're a recipient of the data. So there's certain things, because I work within the municipality and the rest of the team works within the municipality, there's certain things that I know about the data just by virtue of being within the organization. And we would, in some instances, put the data up and then get questions by some people, you know, what does this mean? What does that mean? And we did follow a method where we had metadata put up and stuff, but sometimes we didn't realize how much needed to go into the metadata until somebody else used it and would say something like, I have no idea what this means. Well, how come this doesn't say anything? And how come, you know, so there's a lot of understanding that needs to happen around the jargon that's used within the city environment. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is data is often presented in a very neat way, and all the columns and rows are filled, and it's captured in the same way every single year and whatever. But to get to even that stage, a lot of work has had to go into that. And a lot of the data that we had, like I've been saying, we have that data because we are a city. So it comes as the byproduct of providing a service. For example, electricity customers, all of that data is aggregated, and we know how much electricity is used in a certain area, and so forth and so forth. But the way that that data is captured is not captured with the end user in mind. It's just captured so that we've got records of who's using electricity and how much they're using. And so we had to put in a lot of work, not necessarily electricity, but in other cases, a lot of work around making it usable, so that the end user has got a value for every year, and a value that compares to the value the year before, and so that we only put up data where the methodology is comparable between the 2 years. So a lot of that work, I mean, even now, I wouldn't say that we are 100% there, but I think that the reality is that in the real world, data is never 100% clean and ready to use as is.
In terms of how recipients received data, do you have any success stories to share?
We have a couple of success stories, but I'll use the most recent and I think probably the most successful. So we recently went through some innovative training on how to estimate GDP using satellite nightlight data. And, you know, we all got this training, but a colleague of mine within the department, Justice, took it a step further and basically was able to calculate the consumption of electricity and convert that into or the consumption of energy rather, and convert that into GDP data estimates per ward level using our ward level categories. For anyone who's familiar with GDP data, you know that it's easy to find it globally at the global level. You know it's easy to find it at the national level, sometimes provincial, not very easy at the city level, and then ward level or anything below city is just almost unheard of. You just don't find GDP data, comparable GDP data even at that level. So when we released that data that he had estimated and put together, we shared it on the portal and we shared it via social media, and it was such a success. We literally had people offering to fly down to Durban just to find out the methodology. We, the comments on the LinkedIn page as people downloaded the data, we had comments from professors globally, from all over the world. We had thousands of comments, and it's all from really established academics, because, like I say, it's so hard to get GDP data that is reputable at the granular level. So it was such a success story, which showed that when you open data and when you give people access to data, and when you innovate using these types of tools around data, there's so much value that can be added to, I guess, the global community even. I think the city was the first in the country, and I mean, probably more than just the country, but to measure and to come up with the time series data of ward level GDP data. So yeah, that's really still one of our success stories, and it was quite exciting.
And where can people find SCODA and the Durban EDGE?
So SCODA is at scoda.co.za.
The Durban EDGE can be found on edge.durban via Twitter. So the Twitter page is at Durban EDGE, Facebook at Durban EDGE, and LinkedIn, the Durban EDGE.